Welcome back, everyone, to the Art of We podcast. This is a special celebratory episode number for us. We've reached the milestone of 100 episodes.
Woohoo!
Very
So
exciting.
exciting. I'm so proud of us. We really have stuck to our commitment and keep, finding topics to deepen and share. And it's such a joy to do this with you. I can't tell you how meaningful this is. It's like a real dream come true. So it's a big moment for me in my journey, and it's a big moment for us as a couple. What do you say?
Yeah, it's really fun. And yeah, I agree. You can't get to 100 episodes without going through some adversity and challenges, which, we've made it through. So it's very exciting.
And it's such a growth process for us. Like, we're really walking our talk here. We're not we're not saying things we're not doing,
Right.
It's calling us to another level of partnership by exposing ourselves, in some way, and also really honing in every week around, okay, what's going on? What do we need to optimize? What's working, what's not working? It's really an awesome privilege to get to do this.
So the occasion of 100 being an interesting number took us into a conversation about numbers, and
Yeah.
we were having a conversation with a couple that we know about how the way you set up your finances can either be very supportive or potentially very unsupportive of the collaborative type of relationship that we want to build together. And so it was a really fun and juicy and interesting conversation. So we thought we would share a way that we chose to move into partnership around finances. And I guess the preamble is there are plenty of different ways to do this. And as usual, we're just going to share what we've done and why we've done what we've done and how doing what we've done has impacted us and what we've learned and where we continue to have growth edges.
Yes, exactly. And I think I want to just drop in here too that a big part of our partnership and what we're up to together is learning how to address inequities and power dynamics and all that kind of stuff that can sneak into so many different partnerships in so many different ways. And we really stand for equity and equality. And, we stand for that out in the world. And we also, one way that we're really working it is how to address it inside a partnership. And this particular model that we're about to talk about and share about, I believe is one way of really supporting equitable model for people who come into partnership, have different levels of resources, have different levels of income, and all the things to help address some of those sneaky dynamics that can get in there and cause
Right.
havoc.
Right. Money it means different things to different people. And for most people I've ever talked to about it, has a quality of safety and security attached to it. So if you resonate with the fact that your bank account at least has some flavors of security to it, maybe you feel more secure when the number goes up and less secure when it goes down. Anything that helps a couple feel more secure in their commitment to each other is something that we think, should be put into play or at least talked about as an option. So we went through a transition when we got married, and maybe I think it would be really useful to talk a little bit about how we were with finances and partners before we got together, so we can talk about that transition and what made sense to us. I wonder if you were not married before, but you spent many years in different partnerships that were committed partnerships. What was your kind of conceptual framework around finances and partners?
Well, the most extreme compared to what we're going to be talking about today, the most extreme example that comes up for me when you ask that question is when I was with a partner who I thought I was going to be with for life, and we were living together, and I was so adamant about making sure that everything was financially split down the middle, penny for penny, even though I had a lot less financial earning power at the time. I think I was still studying, all these kinds of things, but I was like, I didn't want any sort of judgment from him about, oh, I have to carry the load, or she's not earning her keep. So rather than talking about those things, I was just like, nope, we're splitting everything penny for penny. That's the end of the conversation because I thought that would be an empowering way to be inside of partnership as a woman. So that was probably the most extreme example. And then after that, I guess before I met you, there wasn't any partnerships where we got to the place of actually sharing finances or being in some sort of conversation about finances.
Okay. So the concept of equity was expressed in terms of the penny for penny. Was that like even splitting like checks when you went out to dinner and things like that? Is that how that worked?
Yeah.
Okay.
Checks, rent. We didn't own at the time. Um, everything.
And did you keep your finances separate in separate accounts and so on?
They were separate and we didn't try to combine them yet because we weren't married and we had never even talked about what that was going to look like had we had
Okay.
gotten married, but we didn't reach that point.
Right.
So
Okay.
that's what it looked like.
I'm guessing guessing most people listening can relate to that. I mean, it's a pretty kind of run of the mill situation, right? You fall in love, you commit to being together, you even move in together. You might be on the same lease, but
Right.
you're not married, so you haven't combined your finances really.
Right. For sure. And then obviously once people get married, there's all sorts of different ways that people choose to navigate that. But I am curious how conscious people are about talking about the underlying drives, desires, fears, needs,
Right.
instead of just kind of going into some sort of this is how it should be done. How did you guys do it when you got married in your first marriage?
Right. So if you're a new listener, you may not know that I was married for 20 years before I met Krista. We've been together. We've been married for 5 years. We've been together 7. So we just had our 5th anniversary. Very exciting. My first marriage started in my 20s, and my partner came from a family with way more financial resources than I had. And as we got closer to wedding, after I had proposed and she had accepted, the conversation was brought up by my future father-in-law about a prenuptial agreement. And, at that time I was in medical school and don't think, I mean, if I think about like the ledger of, what I had and what I owed from educational debt, I think I was probably at best, it was zeroed out, so I didn't have any assets that I needed to protect or even thought about. And
Because you had such a big balance of debt, is what you're saying.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really have a second thought about agreeing to the wealth that existed before I entered the picture, not being mine going into the future. So
Mm-hmm.
I spent 20 years in a relationship with a prenuptial agreement, and to be honest, I mean it it impacted how I thought about sharing finances. And I could talk for a long time about that, but the headline was that because we didn't equally have skin in the game about our future, because the story that kept being told throughout the relationship was that my now ex-wife would be taken care of in older age with money from her family. My drive to earn money was pretty weak because I wasn't accounting for what a person needs to think about in the future when you can't work anymore or get retired or whatever happens in the future. So it
Because the
was interesting.
idea, like you said, was that you both of you were going to be taken care of. So it was no big.
Well, as long as I was with her, I would be taken care
Yeah, exactly.
of. so, so that was interesting. That was different.
Did
And
it also put like a power dynamic inside the partnership around spending? Like if most of the money was coming through her side of the family, what happened around decision making and spending and all of that kind of stuff?
hard to describe the power dynamic, but I'm gonna give it a shot. It felt the felt sense of it on in my body was like I was kind of acting like a teenager who was on some kind of scholarship. That if I wanted to make a decision about where we were going on, let's say on vacation, the power dynamic was like a trump card of like, well, my dad's gonna pay for us. This I'm using her voice. My dad's gonna pay for us to and the whole family, extended family, to be at a house in Europe for a month this summer. So why would we ever go to maybe the place you want to go to and spend our money when we could be having this, luxurious experience on my father's dime kind of
Mm.
thing?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so I submitted to that. I embraced that kind of younger psychology,
Mm-hmm.
and I wasn't even aware that that was liability until it became aware, until the awareness dawned on me.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So I'm trying to say this without any blame because I went right into it. I was like, wow, this is great. I have a father-in-law who is wealthy, and we're going to have these great experiences together, and I enjoy being with her family, but I wasn't able to really fully embrace the co-leadership of a family,
Mm-hmm.
in my case, man and woman. Like I wasn't fully fledged into that leadership because I was going along with making choices around things being provided to me, if that makes sense.
Totally. Totally. And then you're not developing the strength of here's what I want and I'm going to go after that. And
Exactly.
how do we collaborate as a couple to make that happen and support each other's greatest desires and greatest potential? It's a very different conversation and very different dynamic. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it's important to look at these different dynamics. It's so important for the health and wellness of a relationship. And so when we come back from this little break we're going to take, we'll share our journey when we met and the financial structure that we decided to build to help us succeed more in this collaborative type of partnership. We'll be right back. We hope you're enjoying this episode. I want to take a quick break to let you know about a gift we created for you and your partner. We compiled our top 10 relationship agreements, agreements that have been so powerful in supporting the success of our partnership that we even turned them into our wedding vows. These agreements help us stay connected, growing, and thriving as a couple, and they've been critical to help us create a kind of we that's way beyond what we've ever experienced before. You can download this free gift at KristaVanderveer.com. That's KristaVanderveer.com. Also, if you enjoy our podcast, it would be so meaningful to us if you left us a rating and review. Not only does it help others find us, but it gives us critical feedback on how we're doing. Thanks in advance, and now back to the episode.
Welcome back, everyone. So before we go into the detail of how we ultimately set things up, I want to share a couple of things as we were moving into this commitment together and what we encountered. I had a funny conversation with the divorce attorney who helped me through my divorce. When she found out that I was engaged, she asked me, "Are you going to do a prenuptial agreement?" And I said, "Well, it didn't really occur to me that that would be something I would want." And she said, "Well, you should really think about it." And I said, I knew that she had just recently got remarried. And so I asked her if she had a prenup in her new relationship. And she said, no. I thought that was pretty funny.
That is kind of strange.
Um, so one of the models that I think is interesting is in cultural anthropology. When I was studying that in undergrad, one of my mentors was really into looking at different economic systems that were used by indigenous people. And the most common one in a tribal setting is that the whole tribe puts everything in, and whoever's in need takes something out. So it's a all for one for all kind of model.
Mm-hmm.
And the term for that in anthropology is a potlatch economy, kind of like a potluck phenomenon, if you've ever been to a potluck. So this is different from the accounting for every penny model that you were in with a previous partner.
Mm-hmm. Like
And
tit for tat is what you called it.
tit for tat. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Data there about what was more successful?
Well, it wasn't about what was more successful. It was more about what are the implications of these different strategies.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what I remember about that conversation in college was that an indigenous group might have certain assets like, let's say, fruit or a particular kind of wood that they would use for, canoes, or they might have cattle or in Africa or something like that. And the idea was that in an all for one for all model, value that's brought by individuals in the group might not be cattle. It might not be the fruit or the wood or the things. It might be raising children, or it
Mm-hmm.
might be leadership, or it might be hunting, or it might be any number of really essential aspects of success for the group.
And they were all really valued.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think this is such a good conversation. I mean, there's so much inside of our cultural experience and the culture we live in where a lot of those things aren't valued in the same way as money,
Exactly.
for example.
Exactly. And
And
so
then, yeah,
the only reason that it would have any relevance to a group of people in an indigenous setting to have this tit for tat, kind of this for this exchange would be to be dealing with an outside group. So
mm,
you wouldn't it wouldn't occur to you to have that kind of economic arrangement inside of your own group. And so I
right.
just think that's a really interesting evolution of like human relationship, is that the tit for tat implies that the person's outside of your group.
This is so interesting and it's very divisive.
Yeah,
And not only that, but imagine if the tables were turned and the tit for tat was about how well people raise children. Meaning, like, what if what was really, really, really valuable was the raising of children and not necessarily the money they can bring in?
well, in these cultures, that, at least the observation of the anthropologists, which is a whole nother question of how accurate that is, but the the success of the group was not just determined by, who could go cut down the right tree at the right time or get the fruit or get the cattle or whatever. It was obviously raising children was really critical to the
Mm-hmm.
success of the tribe. So there was no observable kind of ranking of these different functions for the success to be maximized.
Right. I feel like in our culture that's reversed, meaning like
Absolutely.
it's so
Absolutely.
intense, which causes issues for couples to navigate when there isn't observation about what's actually valuable, and it's all valuable. All of it is valuable.
Right.
And in a culture of ours, this is where I get a little fired up because there's so much inequity in value around what people are bringing. And there's a lot of sexism, there's a lot of inequality, there's so many things, so many layers that make it very complex. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, in our partnership, we're really standing for equity. And that doesn't mean that we're doing the tit for tat. That doesn't equate to equity for us.
Right, for sure. And obviously, if I'm representing my tribe and I'm going to another tribe to do a transaction,
Mm-hmm.
like maybe I need animal pelts from another tribe but I have cattle, it's like, well, it's not really going to work for me to say, well, we raise our kids really well, so why don't we raise your kids and you'll give us the animal pelts? No, it's like inconvenient, right? It's like it if you're going to be relating to outside groups, you want to have things that can be traded easily,
Mm-hmm.
that are concrete, right? Like giving, I don't know if this is actually a myth or if it's true, that in Manhattan that the indigenous people were given beads in exchange for the island of Manhattan. So there's a transactional quality with an outside group.
Mm-hmm.
But inside of our group, if we perceive the people in our group as members of our group, then why would we do the tit for
Mm-hmm.
tat? It doesn't make
Mm-hmm.
any sense.
Right. Which leads us to our conversation early on after we got engaged. We're like, okay, we're in this. We're going to be navigating this. We came with different levels of assets. You had more assets than I had. It wasn't like a big disparaging millions of dollars difference like some people enter into partnership with, but enough to just be obviously be in the conversation about. And ultimately we knew both instinctively and also in our hearts that the kind of partnership that we wanted to create together wasn't going to work if there was any sort of not doing we like any sort of like I'm going to keep these assets over here from our partnership or from you, or I want to create subversive situation inside of our partnership. And
Right. Well,
we
it goes to this conversation about what is the nature of the asset. Like you said, I had more assets, but you had more relational capacity than I did. So that's a huge asset. I mean,
right, that's a
that's
good
just my
point.
perspective.
Yeah.
So are you going to hold off part of your relational capacity over here and
I
not put it
probably
in the
would.
kitty?
I probably, honestly, I probably would have. And I don't even know if either of us would have entered
Yeah,
into a partnership with that kind of tit for tat. But if I
yeah,
had, I probably would have withheld part of myself. And I think
right,
that can be part of the issue with doing money together as a couple, a committed couple,
right,
doing these different piles in different places that aren't
exactly.
ours.
So there's a kind of a subtle benefit, maybe not so subtle, of putting your financial assets together, which is that it creates an environment where the other assets that you bring to the table, whether they're communication capacities or,
Healing
you
trauma
know,
capacities,
sure, yeah, exactly.
mental health capacities,
Yeah,
all of it. Yeah.
physical health, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. All of it is assets. And
Yeah.
in
We're
our
not
culture,
competing.
exactly. And like you said, we overemphasize the dollar signs in the asset assessment when we
Right.
think about, like, when somebody says net worth, it's like, well, you're talking about money. You're not
Right.
talking about that person's inherent existential worth to
Right.
society, which might be very high without very many dollars in the bank account. Anyway,
Yeah. And we go back to our knowing in our hearts that we can do more than I can. And this kind of model of, we're all in. We are all in. And part of that is then taking responsibility together, co responsibility for our outcomes, personally, professionally, every area. So I'm more invested in our partnership and in what you're up to and what I'm up to and what we're up to because we don't have these different buckets.
same here. It feels great to me. I think it works really well for us.
Yeah.
And so we ended up combining our finances. We put what used to be individual consulting companies that were ours to control and use whatever profit came from that, put it all underneath our couple assets or our couple control, let's say.
So basically from a on the page perspective, it's like a parent company that we co-own 50-50 that owns all of our businesses underneath that.
And that works great.
That works really great for us. And would you say that there's anything in that model where you feel like you've struggled in our partnership? I mean, just to be totally revealed, there we do have different levels of income, of course, and you're the person who brings in the most income. So there's a difference in that. But like we were saying before, there's other ways that I contribute.
I think that you said that I have a higher income than you, but the reality is that at least the way I perceive it, is that the amount of processing and coaching and leadership development that happens in our conversations at home are the reason why things are going well in
Mm-hmm.
my career. And so to me, it's very much this economic structure that we were talking about, where the two of us are, I mean, my body is physically in front of the computer on the calls, working with the team and customers and other leaders and so on. But it's
Mm-hmm.
100% the case that in the time since we made that decision to combine our finances and get married, uh, it's just been a huge shift in my capacity to earn, because it's we earning. It's not me earning
It's learning.
anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can't tell you how fortunate I feel that we adopt that perspective. And I think that there was a growth period for us early on together. Like I had to be like, wait a minute, like I'm investing a lot of my time, a lot of my energy in moving forward this particular line of expression that's coming through you. And this does feel like a we thing. I think it's a normal thing for a woman to have to stand for her value inside of the kind of setup that you and I have. And I feel very fortunate that you have been so 100% on board with, yeah, you're right. That fits and that's what's happening. And that's part of being able to create this equity inside of our partnership. Thanks for bringing that up.
I think it's important to acknowledge that. I mean, you could take any example, right, of a person who appears to be personally having a lot of success, and you could think it's about them, right? But like Taylor Swift, for example, I don't know why I'm thinking about Taylor Swift right now, but a famous person who appears to be like a big star, and she is, but think of how many people, I know
She's
her
got on her
mom.
team.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like how many people are there making that happen, or Simone Biles, or
Right.
anybody, who's like rocking it out. Like there's so many people making that happen. And hopefully they all feel like they're being honored for their contribution to that, right? It's like it's a team effort, no matter how you slice it.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm thinking about the people who are listening to this and asking some questions. I just want to bring in a couple aspects here. Like, what if somebody is in a partnership that their partner doesn't feel ambitious? Like they don't have ambitious goals. They're not like you and I, who, no matter what our setup is, we're both excited to move our lives and our expression, our potential forward. What would you say to that person if they have a partner who's not in the we game in that way?
The word ambition is interesting because I think in conventional terms, people usually are pointing toward financial ambition, like
Mm-hmm.
making more money or something like that. But, artists who are really committed to their art, you could say are very ambitious because they want to create art that's more and more them, or more and more creative, more and more
Mm-hmm.
authentic, maybe. My question would be for the person who says that is, in what area is your partner ambitious? It sounds like you might not be acknowledging the place where they are, and if you can't come up with one, then have a conversation with your partner about that and see if the less ambitious partner is willing to. It sounds like the writer of this question has ambition. Is your partner willing to play a supporting role in that ambition that you have, to really support you in that? Because that's a really valuable role.
Yeah, absolutely. Think about all the president's partners.
Yeah,
I mean, talk about
seriously.
supporting ambition, and have to ambitiously support the ambition.
Yes.
Another question might be, there's too much of a gap inside of our individual assets to find agreement about the model that you're representing today. What would our advice be to them?
Well, I think that I still believe that when there's a big gap going into partnership, it's valid for money that's been earned by a family prior to the onset of the relationship to be kept in the family that it belonged to before the
Like
relationship started.
your father-in-law, your ex-father-in-law.
Yeah, like that. Exactly.
Yeah.
But there might be a way for the person with more financial assets coming in to bring a certain amount that would feel comfortable, and make the couple more capable of doing the kinds of things they want to do in their lives. I'm sure that there are financial advisors who have all kinds of different strategies to offer
Right.
folks like that who are in that situation, and I'm not an expert in that, but to me it seems a little bit suspicious for a spouse who's coming into a partnership where their soon to be partner has a whole lot of money that they don't have, to expect to one day have half of that.
I think for me, when I'm listening here to your response, I'm thinking about if I came into our relationship with a lot of money, a lot, let's just say a lot of money, and there was a big gap between us, and we chose each other to be life partners, and we're like, we're doing this, and we had the skills and the tools that we have with the art of we really clarified what we're up to in our partnership, what that means, what that looks like, and we had the kind of agreements that we have around how we make decisions, how we collaborate about things, how we clean things up when there's injuries or impacts that don't feel good, or mistakes are made. We didn't have that. I can't really imagine how that would work very well, to not have a structure. It's kind of like when we were preparing for this episode, is like, how do you create the pot for a plant to really grow and thrive? And that includes the money, like the pot of money, like the pot that can contain the money and the assets and all of that. And I think that there is a way to do it, but it takes a lot of responsibility and very adult conversations. And
Right.
maybe that would be rather, maybe it's agreements written and signed.
For sure.
We
Yeah.
don't have ours signed, but we have them written. We're both on board with them, but I think that
Wait,
there's
I didn't
probably,
sign that.
yeah, exactly. I have
Yeah.
it on video, you saying I do. So,
That's true.
but yeah, it's finances. Finances are always a tricky territory. And we wanted, like you said at the beginning, we wanted to share our model, what really works well for us to create this kind of equality in our we that we're both totally invested in.
For sure. For sure. Well, thank you for doing this together the way we do it. And may this information be useful and helpful to people.
And reach out to us. We want to hear, how do you guys do finances? How does it work for you? Have you found any solutions that we haven't addressed here or talked about on this episode? And also, if it's valuable to you, if our content is valuable, we would so appreciate for you to leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast platform. I get tickled pink every time I get to read your words, and it's so meaningful for us, and it really helps other people find what we have to offer as well. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.